We've got some massive decisions to make this week in SuperCoach. Hey, it's MJ from the Coaches Panel. For some of us, we're nearing the ends of the boost trades that are available to us, and we're desperately keen to make these next couple of upgrades before the mid-season buy block lands. So what are the trades we should be making? We've got some good value options that have landed. A couple of cheapies have snuck around. And then with the buys in position, we do need to be factoring them in our upgrade cadence. Who are my top 10 trade targets for this week in SuperCoach? I'm going to kick it off with my number one trade target this week. It is Henry Hustwaite. He's been exceptional since coming into the side 2 weeks ago. Now, injuries, while never great, have created opportunities for Henry to showcase that high SuperCoach scoring that he's done at the lower tiers in the VFL. He's been able to replicate that in the AFL level. A really favourable break even, negative 87, already over a quarter of the competition, have their hands on him at the moment. And he's going to be playing over the next couple of weeks. A decent matchup this week against the D's. I think he's still very, very fieldable. I'd probably prefer him on field over Xavier Lindsay, who's playing in that same game. There's only one slight concern, and that is the injury that created the opportunity and the suspensions that have created the opportunities for him to get into the side ends in about 2 weeks' time when Connor Nash comes back into the side. The other thing that's sitting alongside it is that Cam Mackenzie's due back in about 2 weeks as well. So there might come a junction where in a fortnight's time, he may not get any more opportunities. But the reality is he's going to make some significant cash now that he's on the bubble. Over these next 2 weeks, he's going to jump upwards towards that $250,000 price point in that 2 weeks. And that extra 100K that you're going to be able to have banked, really critical for not only building team value, but also the downgrade that it could present for you this week. Just gives you that opportunity to max out and do another upgrade somewhere else. Let's hope he can last a little bit more than 2 weeks, but politely, he's doing a lot more than what others are in our benches. I'm looking at a Closey, I'm looking at a Moraeus, I'm looking even at a Clay Hall, guys that we thought would be in and around for a decent stretch of games have not really done a whole lot for us just yet. So for me, Henry Hustwaite's the number one trade target this week. Not far behind, in at number 2, we put him in the top 10 trade targets last week and said, look, there was a risk profile associated with a tag, but if you could break that, it wouldn't be his basement price the subsequent week. That's what happened for Chad Warner. Not only did he not get tagged, but Bedford goes out, gets subbed out. Chad Warner is my number 2 trade target. He was outstanding last week. Monster ceiling score. 488K is what you're paying for now. And we've seen a pretty sizable role shift, and he's coming into a really favourable fixture. He did enough to pick up dual position status for us, but in the last 3 weeks, his lowest centre bounce attendance rate is 70%. So we've seen a seismic shift in the last 3 weeks. And to go alongside that is a fixture that is so good for inside mids for the Swans. Here's what they've got. Bombers, Blues, Melbourne, the Crows, the only really challenging matchup, and then Richmond before they roll into the buys. This is an awesome selection. And while you're probably not screaming out for another forward, to get a guy that has got the historical pedigree of 105 plus safely in SuperCoach, to be able to take him at this price point with an improved role and a great fixture, I think is awesome. It does clearly seem to be now that teams are much more concerned about an Isaac Heaney and what he's doing at stoppage and at clearance moments rather than a Chad Warner. So I think this is a great outcome. Yes, you probably don't need another forward, but so much value, so much good role, so much good stuff about the fixture. I'm very, very comfortable to advocate for Chad Warner as my number 2 trade target. It does feel like this year we've got to be a little creative with our cash generation and our trades. And so one of the challenges alongside that is how do we get up to these big dog options? And it's why my number 3 trade target feels like it's not now or never, but it's getting hard to say no much longer. I'm talking about Harry Sheezel, up at 560,000, well north of that by a couple of grand. Got that break even of 108, of the average rather of 108, the break even of 78. He's got that playmaker role. He is back into that distribution unit, whether it's for a long time or just a mid-level time. We'll have to wait and see, but so much of the ball is funneling through him. They want the ball in his hand. His handball receives are off the chart. They are looking to get the ball to him at every single space. And this fixture for North Melbourne, for not only for midfielders, but for those playing off that distribution space over these next couple of weeks, looks really, really favourable. It isn't awesome Brisbane matchup this week, but I can just see Brisbane going, we're going to match you at the midfield. We know we're better than you there. We know we're going to destroy you in various parts of your forward line. If you want to give Sheezy ball 40 touches, be our guest, we're going to match it, which is great for SuperCoach because the volume of opportunity can be there. And if he uses it well, let alone that turns into some score involvements, we could really see another pop score from him. I think he's back to his 2024 scoring best, and it's getting hard now because you've got favourable role, really challenging price point, and now high ownership. That's the thing. When these guys start to move and you don't own them, it gets really, really hard, and it almost becomes someone you've just got to let them go. He's been awesome the last couple of weeks, and it's certainly almost now or after the bye that you need to get into Harry Sheezel. My number 4 trade target for the week is one of his teammates, actually, and it's a Riley Hardman. On paper, this doesn't look awesome, but he's come off the back of a mid-70s score last week. He's under 200,000, got a negative break even. Not even 1% of coaches own him right now, so super unique and cheap. Like I said, that average isn't great, but based off last week's performance, it gives me a lot of confidence that Riley's starting to feel like he belongs at this elite AFL level. Ask anybody that watches and really follows North Melbourne's list build and that team really closely over the last couple of years, they will all tell you that Riley is this guy they've got high hopes for because smart footballer, high IQ, good user of the ball, knows how to get into damaging positions both to defend and to create offense out of the back half for his team. They started to bring the ball through him a little bit more, not as much as Sheezel, but comparable to a Caleb Daniel back there. I think he's starting to find his feet. And while we might not be like, it's a little more pricey than I would like, which I do agree with you, the reality is if you're trying to get out of a Jackson Pryor this week and looking to do 2 downgrades, so you're like, a Hustwaite's one, I need to get some cash off Pryor, and I need to be able to get that upgrade, whether you're jumping up off a player such as, not saying it should be, but a Lindsay or a Moraes type or whomever it actually is, he does present some value for you through there. That fixture's not too bad for North Melbourne. It does start to open up with some opponents. I think he's now locked into this best 22 with that health that he's found and really strong performance last week. I'm happy to advocate for trading into Riley Hardman. And then my number 5 trade target for the week, going to stay in unique spaces for you at 3% ownership, Josh Dacos, under 500,000. So certainly buying him at a nice cheap price point, an average of 94. But what I love about what Josh is doing is really becoming one of the central playmakers across halfback. Any attention that's going to hit anyone in that Collingwood backline demands that you go to a Dan Houston first, who's more penetrating with his kick. Josh will slice you up through his hard gut running and movement, and he'll create, a lot of uncontested possessions, a lot of uncontested marks. He's really damaging when he gets into those open spaces, whereas Houston has this almost elite-like penetration about what he does that Josh just doesn't quite have to his game. This sounds really negative on Josh. I'm being clearly not to say he's a top 5 trade target, but everything is opening up for him with some more attention to Dan. If anyone's putting tags on this Collingwood team, they're going to his brother Nick as a result. And this fixture's really starting to open up. It really pops after the bye, but it's really opened up now after the first kind of 6 weeks of the year was quite difficult in terms of rebounding defenders, run and carry defenders, people taking kick-ins, which Josh is doing all of those things. It's favourable. I like him. He offers great upside. His last 2 weeks has been outstanding, and I think he's closer to that 100, 105 average defender for the rest of the year rather than where he sits at 94. And he's offering some value with a break even in the high 60s. It's not quite now or never, but now's the value time to buy. 2 weeks was perfect. Now it's still pretty good. So those are my top 5 trade targets. Hustwaite, it's Warner, it is Sheasel, it is Hardman, and it is Dacos. You ready for a couple more? All right, let's go. Lachie Neale is my number 6 trade target. I got to be honest, I wrestled to and fro about putting him into last week's episode, but I was a little concerned that potentially a Touk Miller tag might be the negating thing that came to him. Didn't really eventuate. And so now what we've got is a guy that has clearly got 115 to 125 pedigree at a really cheap price point based on what we know he can do. Under 600,000, got a break even under 80, and a match up against North Melbourne that is really quite favourable. In his last 3 against the Roos, he's gone on an average of 135. That includes a 170 plus score that sits through there. And as great as all those things are, it's the fact that he's got a really critical buy for us as 16. So it means that as we now get towards these mid-season buys, it means you've got this captaincy, vice-captaincy option most weeks, politely, but through the buys, up until that final junction at round 16, you've got a top-tier mid playing through there. And there are some nice matchups that sit along the way for him. So to me, it's there. The tag is always a risk in certain matchups, but history would say he's going to find a way over the totality of the season to really break that apart. I like Lockie. This is your chance to get him if you want to jump in. He's not unique, but with that nice buy, a pretty favourable matchup this week, I think he's someone I'm pretty happy to trade into. My number 7 trade target is Tristan Xerri. The beauty of the flex means you don't have to do the TDK out to Tristan Xerri approach. You've got volumes and ways to get there. But his last couple of weeks is well and truly back to form. After this week, should his scoring trend continue, he'll be more expensive than what he was at the start of the year. I think it's quite clear to coaches now that the number 1 and 2 rucks this year, based off not only what we've seen, but what I'm quite confident will trend through the rest of the year, is Gawn and Xerri are the best 2 rucks. We need and want to have the best scoring options in our team for as long as we can possibly have them. This is a pathway to get there. There's a number of ways you can do it. TDK is a way. It might not be the way, but it could be a way for you to get there. And the matchup is Brisbane this week isn't great, but there's a West Coast game that's coming up out after the bye. There's a Richmond game before the bye. To me, if you want your hands on Xerri, it does need to be this week, or you're going to deal with it at round 13. But you're probably paying a little bit more. The optimum spot was 3 weeks ago. That was the gravy spot to get into Tristan Xerri, and well done if you made that move. But it's still an available spot for you now. I don't think it's a high priority because there's not as much value as you could be getting with other players. It might also positionally might not be critical for you, but I think this is a great line to still get him if you want to address Tristan Xerri before the bye. It's this week, over the next couple of weeks. I just think you're then trading into a guy who's going to miss a week within a 1 month option, and I never like doing that. I'd rather than get him after the bye. So my number 6 trade target is him. Actually, it's my 7. Get your numbers together, MJ. Who's my number 8 trade target? Tom Green. We just spoke about a few moments ago about how important having a premium with that round 16 buy could be, that just helps that upgrade flow of your team through the buys really get incredibly navigating strong. And that's why I've got Tom Green in part in this spot. Look, based on his break even, you could probably wait a week of 139. He hasn't shown really the capacity to hit that just yet this year, but there's just something about Tom that you can just see that it is not quite, but almost there. He's having really quiet first quarters and first halves and storming home as the game goes on, which certainly is favourable in SuperCoach if it is a close game. But we want to see him dominate in that first quarter. We haven't yet seen it. And the promising thing is he's still got a really decent average, knocking on the door of 110 without putting together a 4-quarter game. So I'm quite comfortable to get into a little bit of Tom Green action. I think he's favourable. I think he's priced well. And there's some matchups that I really do like through the next 8 weeks that look good for him. I'm happy to get into it. He's super unique, and it helps you with your buy structure. So Tom Green is my number 8 trade target. 2 more players to go. I got one you might not expect and one that's really increasing the risk profile of your team. Who's my number 9 trade target this week? It's Jordan Dawson. I know historically we do try to avoid players coming up against Port Adelaide. They're uber restrictive, but he's got a pretty decent last 3 matchups against Port Adelaide. He, as much as them, love to turn up at these big game moments, and the showdown is as big as it gets for both these teams outside of finals. And a 117 is the average of what Jordan Dawson has delivered over the last 3. It's coming in at a break even of 74, just priced over that $500,000 price point. There's some good matchups still to come for the Crows, specifically post-bye. They haven't had their West Coast game just yet. They haven't had their Richmond game just yet. So those are bankable games that are coming. And I feel like he's got a point to prove, as do the Crows this showdown. Good recent history against them, good price point, and a pretty handy buy for a bunch of us. So I'm happy to recommend coaches to go and trade into Jordan Dawson. And then my last one, like genuine Hail Mary here. And it's because you're trading into a guy blind. But my number 10 trade target this week is Matthias Philippou. We would have loved to have seen him last week, but he was a late out. The reality is he was in the vast majority of our starting squads prior to that preseason injury, and now he's just back. The fact he was a late out isn't really that alarming to me, especially given the fact that he's trained all throughout the week to date. But the reason I like him is it's creative cash generation, and it helps you potentially get out of a guy that's topped out in price in your forward line or your midfield that's been there to make money for you. And you could be trading into a guy that I think's got 100 capacity within him. So, for example, you drop a Caleb Daniel down to a Matthias Philippou. Not only does that fix up your buy structure a little bit more, but it also frees up $145,000. That money alone might just be all you need to be able to then take some money and move a Jackson Pryor type up to a player if you've got some money sitting in the bank. It just might be that extra creative way where you don't feel like you're going all the way down and weakening your on-field performance, but you're like, how do I get comparable scoring between Daniel and Pooh? I think they're pretty similar. Great. I'm actually going to make $145,000 on the downgrade, let alone if we see the highly likely improvement of scoring and cash generation from Matthias. It is risky, without doubt. I'm never a huge fan of jumping blind into a player or a role, which we don't yet know what Matthias will be. I think we could forecast with some confidence he'll be in that midfield, but we'd never truly know something. But if your team needs a risk profile that's a little high, you can afford to take that, and you're looking for some creative ways to improve and maintain good scoring on field, but get some cash movement as well, this might just be right for some teams. Not for everybody, but for some teams, it could be right. But what are your SuperCoach trades this week? I'd love to know. Why don't you comment below and let me know the trades you're planning on making this week. If I listed any of the 10 players you're thinking of trading into, why don't you like this video? And if you are enjoying the videos you're getting here from us at the Coaches Panel, whether it's the AFL Fantasy Trade Targets or the weekly strategy session, they're both available on the channel as well for you to check out. If you are enjoying what you've got from us this season so far, make sure you subscribe, turn notifications on so that as soon as a video drops, we got you covered here at the Coaches Panel. Hey, good luck heading into this weekend of SuperCoach. We hope it is favorable for you. We hope your trades work out well, and we can't wait to be back with you real soon.